Growing up, I always knew that my father's company was the heart of our family. It wasn't just a business, it was his dream, his obsession, and the thing that provided everything we had. From the time I could remember, my father would speak of his company with a spark in his eye. He started it from scratch, with nothing but an idea and a relentless work ethic. He built it piece by piece, and the success he achieved wasn't just for him, it was for us, his family. And for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to help him build his dream. While other kids played outside or went to parties, I was at the office. Even in my early teens, I found myself doing whatever I could to support my father, whether it was filing papers, answering calls, or just being there to listen as he bounced ideas around. I wanted to be involved. I was eager to learn, and my father was more than happy to teach me. At the time, I didn't mind being the one who stayed behind when my friends went out. I felt a deep sense of pride in helping my father build something bigger than ourselves. My father, a strong and determined man, always taught me that nothing worth having comes easy. Hard work, he said, was the only true way to success. By the time I turned 18, I'd already spent years learning the ins and outs of the company. I knew the business as well as he did, maybe even better. My father, who had always been a hands-on leader, started slowly letting me take on more responsibilities. I began sitting in on board meetings, negotiating contracts, and even handling key clients. The trust my father placed in me felt like a blessing, and I took it to heart. My whole life was tied to this company and its success. It wasn't just about the business, it was about proving myself to him, showing him that all the years of hard work and sacrifice meant something. However, despite all of my dedication and sacrifice, my younger brother Jason wasn't interested in the company. He was more interested in living a carefree life, focusing on his studies, hanging out with friends, and following his passions. My father and I often spoke about Jason's lack of interest in the family business, but we both agreed that it was okay. After all, I was there, and I had always been the one who cared the most about the company's future. My father would tell me that one day I would take over, and he would step back and let me carry the torch. Then came the turning point. Jason graduated from college. He came back to the family home, not necessarily to join the business, but just to settle into a more grown-up lifestyle. I thought at first that this was just a phase. He was exploring his options. But as time went on, I started to notice changes. It started with small things, casual conversations with my father about the company. Jason would ask about projects, and I would explain the details. He would nod, pretending to understand, but I could see the disinterest in his eyes. Still, I didn't think too much of it. After all, he was just trying to find his way. But then, things began to shift. My father started seeking Jason's opinion on business matters. Initially, it was just the occasional, "What do you think about this deal?" But as weeks turned into months, Jason was becoming more and more involved in the daily operations of the business. It was subtle at first, just a few meetings here and there, but then I noticed that my father was relying on him more and more for decisions that used to come directly to me. It felt like I was being pushed aside, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I tried not to let it bother me. Jason was my brother after all, and it wasn't as though he was trying to take over. He was just learning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing, something I wasn't fully a part of anymore. I had spent my entire life working for the company, dedicating every ounce of my energy to it, while Jason had spent most of his years away, living a life free of responsibility. One day, everything came to a head. It was a regular Thursday morning when I received an email that changed everything. The subject line read, "Meeting to discuss company leadership." My heart sank as I opened the email. My father had called a meeting, and the only thing on the agenda was discussing the future of the company. I assumed that it was just a standard discussion about our upcoming goals and projections. But as I walked into that conference room, everything changed. There at the head of the table sat my father, Jason, and a handful of the senior executives. I took my seat quietly, my mind racing. My father began the meeting, speaking about the company's future, the direction we were heading, and how important it was to make decisions that would ensure its continued success. Then he turned to Jason. "I've been thinking a lot about the future of this company," my father said. "I believe it's time for a fresh perspective. Jason has been around for a while now, and I think it's time to make him a more integral part of the leadership." My heart dropped. My father wasn't talking about sharing leadership. He was talking about giving Jason the reins. I tried to mask my shock, but I couldn't. "Dad, what do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. My father looked at me, his expression serious but unreadable. "It's time for a change, son. Jason has the vision and the energy we need to take this company to the next level." Jason, who had been mostly silent up until that point, gave a small, awkward smile. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. Confidence, certainty. It was as if the company was already his. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "But Dad, what about everything I've done?" "What? Say about all the years I've worked for this. You've always said I was the one who would take over." My voice was louder than I intended, but I didn't care. The betrayal felt too fresh, too raw. My father's face hardened. "You've done great work, son, but sometimes it's not enough. The company needs more than what you can offer right now. It's time to move forward, and I think Jason is the one who will lead us." The room fell silent. I could hear the sound of my heart breaking as the words echoed in my head. Everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed, meant nothing. My father had chosen Jason over me, and I felt like I had been discarded, replaced. It wasn't just a business decision, it was personal. My father didn't even seem to notice the pain he was causing me. All these years of working late nights, of taking on stress, of prioritizing the company over everything else. And now, I was being told it wasn't enough. Jason looked at me, his face unreadable. "I know this must be tough," he said quietly. "But you know I'll always respect what you've done. This is just how things are now. How things were now, I had given my life to this company, and now it was his." My father had given it to him without a second thought, without even consulting me. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. "I don't believe this," I muttered, my throat tight with emotion. I turned and left the room, walking out of the building without looking back. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed to get away. The pain, the betrayal, it was too much to handle. My father, the man I had looked up to my entire life, had just cut me out, and in his place my brother, who had never worked a day as hard as I had, was now the one running everything. For days, I was a mess. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. It wasn't just the business, it was the family. I felt like my entire life had been a lie. My brother, the one who had never cared, had now been handed everything I had worked for. I tried to talk to him about it, tried to get him to see reason, but all he said was, "I know you're upset, but this is what Dad wants." The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I wasn't angry at Jason alone. I was angry at my father, at the way he had treated me, at how he had torn apart the life I had built in an instant. But I also knew that I couldn't let this defeat me. This company might no longer be mine, but that didn't mean I had to give up. Maybe it was time to build my own legacy. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.